All right. So now that we know basically what visual effects are, how do we know when to actually use it? If we're a filmmaker, how do we know when to call visual effects? Well, there are what I consider 3, and now actually 4, and I'll get to the 4th in a little bit here, but 3 main reasons to creatively call and when to use visual effects. The 4th one we'll talk about isn't really a creative reason, but there are 3 main reasons to use visual effects in a film. The first reason is there's absolutely no practical way to film the scenes described by the script or required by the director. Okay, here's a shot of a movie on the moon. Okay, the astronauts' perilous trip around the moon in Apollo 13. This is 1995, and the transition, perhaps, of Mystique here into a mutant in 2000's X-Men are examples of this. You can't shoot on the moon. You can, but your producer will find out and probably kill you. It's going to blow your budget. Okay, you can't actually hire a mutant to act in your movie. Because people just can't do that, okay? So you have to, there's just no practical way to do it. It's impossible. You have to call visual effects. Another reason, you could do the scene practically, but doing so might actually place someone's life at risk, okay? Here is a shot from 1984's Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and that's Mola Ram, and he just ripped somebody's heart out, okay? If you do that to an actor, if you rip their heart out of their chest, you're in a lot of trouble, okay? There's union rules. There's all kinds of things saying that you cannot do that, okay? If you like little bits of trivia, I'll throw them out there. But this movie was actually rated PG. And it was shocking to all the young people that went to see the movie because this was a very traumatic scene. And because of this movie and because of this specific scene, the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America, said, we need something that's between PG but not quite R. And because of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, the rating PG-13 was invented because of this sequence, okay? So doing something like this, you could do it practically, of course, but putting someone's life at risk, so it's never a good idea. Another example, a Kung Fu movie. I believe this is the story of Ricky. Obviously, you do not want to do this to another actor, so putting someone's life at risk, you're going to call special effects, you're going to call visual effects, of course. Okay, if you want to go way back in time, the very first visual effect done in a narrative film was from a movie called The Execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, by Alfred Clark and Thomas Edison. Yes, that Thomas Edison, okay? And it probably would have been a bad idea to actually behead an actor who was portraying Mary. Here's an actual clip from it, and it's actually, I think it holds up quite a bit. The actual editing trick is simply a jump cut, where they took the real actor out of the movie and replaced it with a dummy. Here it is. There's no sound. The actress lays down, jump cut, and it astounded people, okay? So now you might be saying, well, isn't that a special effect if there is a fake Mary on set and somebody just kind of chops the head off the dummy? Well, yes, it's a combination of a special effect because you have a dummy on set, and it's a visual effect because you're making a creative cut at the time, okay? So the third reason to call visual effects, it's simply more cost effective, or it's simply more practical to call them than to film a scene for real, due to issues of scale or location or both, okay? Obviously, all these orcs attacking this castle would cost a fortune if you had to hire, 10,000 actors and put them in makeup and put them in wardrobe. Just logistically speaking, just trying to get all these people to do something at the same time would be, fairly nightmarish. This is the invasion of D-Day from Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan. You do not want to build all these transport ships, barrage balloons, jeeps, and hire this entire army and naval armada. You could technically do it because it was actually done back in 44, but it cost a fortune. Okay, so you call visual effects. Here's another one. I believe this is from Troy. You can't even see how far back those people are. So if you said, or, if the director yells action, how many of those people are actually going to hear you? They may start running because simply the person in front of them starts running, but it's pretty difficult to deal with potentially all those actors. So yes, of course, you call visual effects. Speaking of humongous costs and overruns, there's a 1963 film called Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. And this film was notorious because it nearly bankrupted 20th Century Fox, as well as broke up many marriages, it ruined careers, and it nearly killed Liz Taylor right there. It was budgeted for $2 million. And in 1963, $2 million is about the equivalent of about $16 million, okay? And they built 20 acres of the port city of Alexandria for the movie. They built it at the famous Pinewood Studios, where they filmed Star Wars and many other films. They built this set in London. Probably not a great idea. They soon realized that they had to replace the palm trees almost daily because all the buildings were peeling in the English moisture. It just was not the proper location to have ancient Rome. Okay. And they ended up abandoning the entire city set that they built here in England. Okay. And they moved the entire thing to Rome. Okay. The cost of the picture ballooned from $16 million. Now, keep in mind, it was a $2 million movie. It ballooned to $16 million. It actually ended up costing $375 million. Everything had to be remade from scratch in Italy, to the extent that 70 sets and thousands of workers actually created a shortage of materials in all of Italy to build the sets for this movie. Now, that is an expensive movie. That's a reason to call visual effects, okay? Matte paintings, set extensions, all kinds of things you could employ, okay? That excess would make the real Cleopatra very proud. So, designing visual effects. Oftentimes you watch a movie and it just doesn't look good, right? And there's a myriad of reasons why this could happen, okay? And oftentimes it's not just, oh, maybe the artists weren't very good. That's what I've seen, often not the case, okay? But when or how or why does it all go wrong when you watch a movie and the effects are just laughable or just terrible? There's very little point in doing an elaborate or a costly visual effects shot if the actual design of it is unsuccessful. Visual effects shots require the same eye for composition and lighting as standard live action shots, okay? You've seen hundreds or perhaps even thousands of shots in cinema where the effect is done poorly. Why does it look bad? Where did it go wrong? Often it comes down to three things, okay? Now here's a shot from, I believe, Scorpion King, and that's supposed to be The Rock, okay? But does it look like The Rock? Not really, okay? So, you've seen lots of examples of bad visual effects shots. Well, the first reason that comes to mind is that it's just poor quality of the artists or the technicians, okay? It's not always the case, but it can be the case, okay? Did they know it looks bad? Perhaps. Did they not have a sophisticated critical eye for the discrepancies? Did the team not have enough skill to pull off what was required, right? Was the required technology to actually make it believable not yet developed to actually pull that off? There's something out there called the uncanny valley. And if you know what that is, we will talk about that later on. And the uncanny valley has to do with how humans look almost real, but not quite real. We'll talk about that in our CG character section a little bit later. Lack of money is often the case. Here's a shot from Escape from LA. And, oftentimes, the shot's just ridiculous. If you've ever gone surfing, it takes a high degree of control. And oftentimes it's not easy to surf right next to somebody as if you're standing, on a piece of wood right next to them, okay? It's a little more dynamic. There's a lot more movement to it than that. And I'll show you this clip here in a little while, but this is one of the laughable shots. So sometimes it's just the scenario is just a little bit crazy, okay? But lack of money or the budget was misspent, Okay? Not every movie can afford Industrial Light and Magic or Weta, two of the big players in visual effects. This is a shot of a man getting eaten by ants in the fourth Indiana Jones movie. Okay? Oftentimes, especially in independent movies, you're forced to use smaller, less adept visual effects houses who may not deliver the best quality. I'm not saying that's the case here. Oftentimes, again, it's just a crazy sequence that makes it unbelievable. But with Indiana Jones, Steven Spielberg, you're obviously going to have a lot of money. You don't often have the amount of budget that George Lucas or Steven Spielberg has. Okay. There's always the lack of time. Everything needs to be done yesterday. Or perhaps there's too many revisions. What we call too many cooks in the kitchen. If you've ever had to design something with 3 or 4 or 5 bosses hovering around you, all trying to get their input in, what we call that is design by committee, and it never usually works out very well. But lack of time often is the case. Directors are notorious for not caring about how long post takes or what's involved, especially if they're not footing the bill. If they're paying a flat rate for visual effects, then why not, noodle it and tweak it 50 times or 100 times over, because the bill, the financing is the same, right? Peter Jackson was actually editing The Hobbit the morning of the premiere. Okay, well, you can do that if you own the visual effects studio. He's the founder of Weta Digital, right? So we'll be seeing a lot more into the both great and not so great as we go through different sections. Here is a shot from 1984's Terminator, I believe. And this is obviously a practical. It's meant to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But does it work? There's lots of reasons why it doesn't. And oftentimes, when you look at bad shots in movies, it looks bad because you're a lot more sophisticated than audiences were back in the day. The very first shot, one of the first movies made by the Lumiere brothers, was simply a piece of footage called Train Entering the Station. And it was just a movie of a train just pulling up to a station. But people had never seen a movie before. And so when it was first exhibited inside of a tent at a fair, people ran out of the tent screaming, thinking that the train was about to enter the train was about to enter the tent and kill them all. So your creative eye and your sophistication grows. And so a lot of these things that were passable at the time are not passable now. Okay. At the time, that shot from Terminator looked pretty good. If you were in the audience in 1984, you'd be thinking that looks great. Okay. But you've seen a lot more movies now, and you've seen how far they can go with it. So people nowadays are more critical. That's called the critical eye. Bad effects are not just for relatively modern movies either. By the way, here's a shot from Spawn. If you've ever had a desire to see the movie Spawn, I believe the hero or the anti-hero actually goes down to hell and talks to the devil, and I believe that's supposed to be the devil. That's some crazy visual effects, and you definitely want to check that out. But bad effects are not just for relatively modern movies.
Down from above and
This
seeing
is
the
a
way
shot.
you're treating me lately.
Are you going to start?
This is a shot from Bing Crosby and Bob Hope, and they did a number of movies together. And the movies were road movies, road to Morocco, road to wherever. And here's a quick sequence of a camel playing a little trick on them. And it's pretty good for the time. The critical eye that you have now, the sophistication that you have now, obviously it doesn't sell. But let's take a look at the camel coming down and nibbling on, I believe, Bob Hope's ear. And you could see that the composition, the compositing aspect of it has something to be desired.
Before I had a chance to say no. Shh. Oh, you're shushing. What's that? What's the matter?
Shh. I hope she didn't hear that. The dead have a way of coming back,
Get out. When they're dead, they're dead.
Not Aunt Lucy. She was a Republican.
Okay, Junior, I'm sorry. I guess I shouldn't have said that.
All right.
You know how I feel about you. I guess in my own way, I sort of love you.
All right, but you don't have to slobber all over me. Guess I kind of love you, too.
So what's going on with the shot? Why does it not work? Well, First is, of course, that the bushes aren't even moving. If a camel was coming down, the bushes should be moving, and maybe they could have had somebody back there wrestling the bushes a little bit. But there's matte lines, and there's the edge integrity is too soft, and there's all kinds of things going on. But as you can see, for the day, way back in the day, things like this for sophistication, it fooled people at the time. Okay? Doesn't fool us now, but it doesn't make the movies any less charming.
What's that?
What's the matter? You yella?
It's only a kangaroo.
Yeah.
What are you getting scared for?